Hello friends and welcome back to my channel. My name is Luz and all I do here is practice fluency using ESL discussion materials that are available online. My favorite website at the moment is the esldiscussionmaterials.com. I go by alphabetical order, so today's letter was T and the topic I chose was tourism. We have 10 questions to get through, so let's get started. Question 1. What springs to mind when you hear the word tourism? Well, when I hear the word tourism, I'm thinking about all the different cultures from around the world and how enriching they are. I'm also thinking about all the interesting and beautiful faces from around the world. I'm also thinking about interesting cities, both modern and historical. And who can forget those airports, airplanes, and custom gates? That's what I'm thinking about. Question 2. Do you think tourism helps people in the world understand each other? Well, not necessarily. I don't think so, and I'm very, very sorry to say this. I feel like it's only really ever open minded people that are actually interested in tourism in the first place. And open minded people are already open to understanding each other. They understand humanity at some level already. So I feel like tourism does very little to bridge the gap of people who don't want to understand humanity whatsoever. It's not very hard to see people like mocking or lifting their noses at different people, different cultures that they don't prefer, or even places they would rather not be at. And it's like, why did you go in the first place? So, no, I don't think so. Question 3. Would you like to work in tourism? Yes, absolutely. I have been very, very privileged to be able to have traveled to many different countries around the world, and I have been welcomed very, very wonderfully. And I wouldn't miss an opportunity to actually return the favor. I can be very pleasant, and I think I could really, really help tourists with the information they need. And I feel like information is what makes the tourism world go around and how accessible it can be. Being able to direct tourists to the places they need to be at, what they need to know about the city, for example. I feel I can really excel at this. But I also acknowledge that there can be a language barrier because I don't speak that many languages. But if I had to speak to tourists in the languages that I do speak and understand, then I would be very, very happy to provide that service. Question 4. What are the good and bad things about tourism? Well, I feel like there's a very, very long list. So let's start with the good things. So I feel like the good things about tourism are the cultural exchange opportunities, of course. I think that tourism gives people the opportunity to decompress and reset because we've all been working and we need to take a break or two before the year ends, for example. We also get to see and familiarize ourselves with the different combinations of humanity around the world. This is one of the most enriching experiences there can ever be. And we also get to see history, by visiting these historical sites, which I'm not really a very big fan of. For me, I feel like I'm there for the cultural immersion and the food, for example, and to spend time with my loved ones. But that's a big thing that people do, travel to see these historical places. The bad things about tourism for me, or the negatives of tourism, are of course the time. Tourism is very time constrained because people have to go back to reality at some point during the trip. And I feel like this really limits the places they can get at, actually. You have to be really organized as well so that you don't end up wasting a lot of time. I also feel like the long hours of travel can deter people from actually participating in tourism, especially if you plan to move from one continent to the other. That can be really, really challenging to a lot of tourists, and it can take a toll. Some people catch the night flight so that they can arrive refreshed and in the morning. That's a big one to kind of look out for. You have to have a decent amount of fitness because sometimes you have to walk, you have to endure the hours of travel as well. People who are not very fit are not gonna end up enjoying the trip as much as people who are quite fit. So that's a negative of tourism as well. And I feel like people also have to be really careful and know the city to be able to make smart decisions about where to see, what to eat, for example, to guarantee that they have a very positive experience in whichever city they're planning to visit, for example. There can be downsides to tourism as well. Question 5. What do you think tourism will be like in the future? Well, I hope it pretty much remains the same because we're able to walk around, we're able to interact with locals at a very personal level. There's a big threat of robots like entering the tourism industry in a big way, which I feel is going to limit our interactions with the local, for example. I hope it remains the same in the way of us interacting with locals. I also hope that airlines can provide bigger seats, especially on those longer routes, for most people in the cabin because, why not? I know that there are some airlines providing cheaper alternatives of travel. It's not going to be such a bad thing for them to kind of increase the seat size or something because I've heard that those seats can be quite tight. Airlines can be a little more considerate there. If more people had a reduced work week, then they can be able to factor in more time into their travel. If they have to work a shorter work week, I feel like people can kind of be able to have more flexibility to plan around longer weekends, for example. And if they have flexibility at the workplace and they're able to work remotely, people who are willing to travel but would otherwise have no time would start to plan around that, even seeing cities that are not very far from where they live. So I'm also hoping that virtual tourism becomes more and more common, especially for old people. With old people becoming really frail, that doesn't have to dictate their opportunities to see the world, and virtual tourism becomes free and available to old people and also people who don't have that many opportunities to travel and see the world. Question 6. Is tourism something that only rich people take part in? Yes, I believe so. I think that you have to have a bit of disposable income and time to spare in order to participate in tourism. Apart from being rich in the financial sense, you also have to have a healthy amount of curiosity to be able to enjoy tourism. You have to be rich in good health as well to be able to travel around the world and to enjoy tourism. You also have to be rich in your level of cultural appreciation so that you're able to immerse yourself in all the different cultures to a healthy extent, of course. So yes, I think you have to be rich in quite a number of ways. Question 7. What do you think of the idea of space tourism? I really like it. I really enjoy the idea of space tourism, although at the moment it's out of reach for regular people and it's only billionaires that have this opportunity to travel to space. And I don't even think that the space shuttles are big enough to accommodate a lot of people at this time anyway. But I think it's a fascinating idea, and I hope that in the future we're going to meet some aliens who are going to be able to show us around. I think that would be a much more enriching experience. So I look forward to it in the future when the technology is more mature and we have some people who know the place and can show us around. Absolutely. Question 8. How does tourism change lives? Well, I feel like the lives of both locals and the personal lives of the individual tourists can be impacted very positively and sometimes negatively, but we want to focus on the positive parts. I know some people who have fallen in love on a trip abroad. That is so wonderful and life-changing. Valuable lessons can be learned from our interactions with people from around the world. We can borrow some of their ideas, they can borrow some of ours. Foodies, they're able to pick up a few recipes and get to practice. And I also think that we're able to change our lifestyles and adapt them in a way that is more healthy and meaningful. I know people who have traveled around the world to also learn about scientific discoveries. Companies do it all the time when they send their employees to different cities around the world. Companies are doing it, so why not us, Question 9. What is ecotourism, and do you think it's a good idea? Well, I think I first experienced ecotourism in the Maldives. And the whole idea, as it was explained to us, is that the resort doesn't generate non-biodegradable waste. For example, all the water is kind of cleaned before it's released back into the ocean. And also the resort is powered by green energy. So this was solar or something else. I'm not very sure about that. And everything is recycled and biodegradable, from the shampoos in the bathroom to the lotions, for example. And I know tourists are also encouraged to bring shower gels and hair conditioners that are also biodegradable to some extent. Well, when we arrived, they didn't really check, but I think this is the idea if you're going to participate in ecotourism. I think it's a very, very wonderful idea. It's almost like you're going back to basics, but not really. It's good for marine life, especially because, those are the guys that suffer the most. So I like the idea and really enjoyed it. Question 10. Is there a difference between a tourist and a backpacker? There's a very small difference, and I think the difference is in the budget. So one of them is willing to spend more on accommodation, while the other isn't willing to spend that much on accommodation. The type of tourism that they can do is very similar in many ways because they will end up at almost the same tourist areas. They will probably eat at the same restaurants as well. But one of them, the backpacker, is not willing to spend hundreds upon hundreds on accommodation. They choose to spend that money in other ways. I also think that backpackers are actually fitter than regular tourists because they're willing to walk around with a couple of pounds on their back, and they're willing to walk very long distances as well. They're fitter, and they're getting even more fit on the trip as opposed to the tourists who is probably overindulging and sleeping too much. Yeah, I think there's a subtle difference there. So I don't prefer to be a backpacker whatsoever. I'm not that fit. I prefer to kind of balance my tourism because I want to enjoy the city. I want to relax as well. So yeah. Alright guys, so that is it from me. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know down in the comments if you would have answered these questions in a similar way, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!